Alright everybody, I'm going to walk you through the basic assembly steps for the stainless steel and steel version of the Torus-2x72. The first step involves these pieces here. You've got your front base, back base, your half-inch thick aluminum back spacer, 4 5/16 by 1 inch bolts, thread locker, and an Allen wrench or Allen driver, 3/16 size bit. First thing, shake up your thread locker, and I found it's easiest just to put a dab right in the holes, so that way you're set to go. And you can just flip your base up. Get them started by hand so you don't cross start anything. Usually run them in a way, make sure everything's looking good. And just give it a slight ratchet at the end. Go around and just double check you got them all. There you go. You get your base piece ready, and then you'll be on to the next step. Alright, the next step after you've got your base all constructed is going to be with the following parts. You get your 2 1/2 by 1 inch precision shoulder bolts, your short roto block, and your long roto block with the slot in it. You're going to need a 1/4 inch Allen wrench, T-handle I prefer, and a 9/16 wrench. And what is this size? A 17 millimeter socket or wrench to put your 10 millimeter bolt through. So that's where we'll start, with the 10 millimeter bolt. I always thread this one in from the back by hand first, then get a decent amount of Loctite on there. Then I take my ratchet, and tighten that nice and snug there. Next step, we're going to be using these nylon washers. I put one of those on that 10 millimeter stud, and then I put one on each of these shoulder bolts. Next, you're going to mount the shoulder bolt with the nylon washer into the first long roto block with the slot facing in this configuration. Then you're going to put another nylon washer on the back side before you mount it onto the stud. Now, on the back side, you will add another nylon washer and a stainless steel washer and your lock nut. Nylon washer, stainless steel washer, lock nut. Now we'll take a 1/4 inch T-handle or whatever Allen wrench you got and your 9/16 wrench, and we'll tighten that up. And the idea here is to go snug, but you're still going to want to be able to rotate that. So that's going to be snug plus, just enough to where you can still move that. But you want it to be on. Next, we're going to go to our backside roto block. We've got your shoulder bolt with the first nylon washer on. Going to mount that through the hole. Add another nylon washer to the backside and mount it onto your base. On the backside, you'll add a nylon washer, your stainless steel washer, and your lock nut. And then it's the same operation. You got your 1/4 inch Allen 9/16 wrench, and we'll tighten that up until it's snug. You can still rotate it, and then give it a little bit extra. You want this to be able to rotate, but you do want it to be somewhat stiff, because that will help as you tilt your grinder once the motor and everything's on there. I usually use this rear one as I tighten that one up just a little bit more, and that helps the rotation from vertical to horizontal grinding later on, that extra tension on there. But before you mount the motor plate, like right now, it's nice to be able to move it just a little bit so that way we can line this up to mount our motor plate in the next step. Alright, so we've got our base, we've got the roto blocks mounted. Our next step is to mount the motor plate. We'll be using 4 1-inch long 5/16 18 button head stainless steel fasteners. We'll do it so the 56C faces out this way where your motor will hang. We'll be using these 4 holes here in the bottom. These 4 here. And once again, I should have done this first, I guess, but make sure your Loctite's shaken up. And I put some down in these 4 holes ahead of time instead of trying to mess around with it while I've got everything kind of like up in the air and everything. So for this, we'll be using run and grab a wrench. 3/16 Allen wrench. So I get it up there. And I've also found too that before doing this step, which I didn't do, I'll stop and do that. It's a good idea to bolt your base down even just temporarily while you're doing the rest of the build, just so everything kind of stays put. So now that I've got that, I'll get these all started. I like to get these all started by hand, and then to save your wrists, usually revert to the 1/4 inch impact here. It's a pretty good assembly tool. I just go back, hit them just all again just to make sure. I mean, you don't want to kill them, even with the little 1/4 inch impact. I mean, If they're on there, they're on there. You don't need to go crazy, but I do want to make sure they're all tight. And there you have it. Now you've got your motor plate attached to your base. The next step will be adding a toolbar slot and the tension plate to the side. Now we're going to move on to installing tracking bar slots and side tension plate. These are the pieces that you'll be working with. The 3 plates, or the 3 tracking bar slats, your Titan plate, and your lock nuts, 1/2" wrench, 1/4" Allen. So, first things first, assemble your 2 3/4" 5/16 stainless steel socket head cap screws through the side of the plate, and you'll notice that there is a specific direction that this will need to go. These are all the same, but you'll see the Titan, the threaded portions with the helicoil insert there. There's one that's really close to the edge. That's the one that's going to go in this configuration onto your machine. It's the lower one. So as long as this one's going to be your lowest point, that's where you hold it upright, place all of your socket head screws through like that. Then I grab my hand, put them over the heads of the screws, and assemble my slats. And just go straight to the motor plate, plop it up there. And once again with the blue Loctite, I do blue Loctite these just out of an abundance of caution. They're using a lock nut, but it's not going to hurt anything to have a little blue Loctite on there just in case. Get these all on there. They'll bottom out on the nylon before they get tight. And this is the part here, if you've got a tooling bar that you're going to be using, I recommend plopping them in there. If you don't have any tooling bars, either wait until you get some that you're going to use, or assemble it, but know that you may or may not have to loosen them up and adjust them just a little bit. I use a little shim stock here to space them out. You may not really need to do this step. You can tighten them down and they'll probably work just fine even without using those. It's just something I do as I assemble. I want to make sure that there's enough clearance there. So I go around, tighten these all just to get them snug. I'm not going overboard on them. So there. Got them all snug. Pull those out. Yeah, I see this is a little tight, but I've got those shims. So that's what we're after. And if you get one that's a little bound up in there a little bit, as you tighten it up, you can just give it a couple little taps with a non-marring rubber mallet or something. It'll pop those into place. Like I said, you probably won't need to do that, but if you do, it's pretty easy to just adjust it quick like. Alright, now that I know everything is good and solid where I want it, I go around. These are 5/16 fasteners, so don't go crazy on them. you know, everybody's version of tight, I guess, is slightly different. I should probably put a torque spec on these, but just get them tight, but don't twist the heads off. But that's one other reason I went with a through hole with a nut on the back side of here instead of tapping this plate, was because if, in the outside chance someone does snap one off, you can just run to the store or get a hold of me and get another fastener, and you're back in business. You didn't end up breaking a bolt off inside of your plate. Now that we're tight, let's go back, double check. We're good to go. And we're on to our next step, which will be the attaching the ratchet pawl, ratchet mechanism, tracking arm, and so we'll begin that now. And moving on to the tracking assembly, we begin that process through 5/32, T-handle, Allen wrench, 1 1/4, 1/4-20, button head screw, and your washer, or sorry, spring. And there's a specific way that I like to install this. You'll notice that swoop of the eye of the spring right there goes that direction. The reason I insert it this way is so that way it sits nice and flush against that eye. And then I go pretty liberal with the blue Loctite on this step because I don't want this moving anywhere. I even had put a little bit in the hole already. So you get that started. I don't run it all the way in, just part way for now. And we're doing that too in this configuration with the grip like that and the little protrusion there that will mount the tracking wheel sticking out towards you. And this is all being done on the right hand side like that. Next, you take your 1/2-13 button head screw and assemble your thrust bearing on there. You start with the washer, the bearing, another washer. Now you take your ratchet pawl, you assemble this onto your ratchet pawl, once again in this configuration like that. Now you add another thrust bearing to this side, starting with your washer, bearing, and another washer. And at this point you've got a thrust bearing on either side, which will allow that tracking or that ratchet pawl to move nice and freely once you get it all tightened up. Once again with the blue Loctite, because I don't want this sucker going anywhere. Now you come over to your tracking arm and you thread that into place. And this uses a 5/16 hex. You can use a ratchet, a T-handle. I've got a ratchet here. The T-handle is actually a bit easier, but I can't find mine right at the moment. And this, you don't want to go crazy. You want it tight, but you don't want to make it so tight that it no longer moves really freely. I mean, you want this little spring, which is a fairly strong spring, even though it's small. You want it to be able to have enough force to pull the pawl back into the ratchet mechanism. All right, so now, oops, I'm missing a screw. I'll be right back. All right, now you got your 3/4 inch, 1/4-20 button head screw. Once again with the blue Loctite, pretty liberal amount. And we're going down through our spring, and you just move this ratchet pawl into position, get it started, and then you'll see it kind of runs into the spring. In order to get around that, you just extend it out by pressing with your thumb and run it down, and you'll notice it starts to come through that backside. You run it, you don't want that to actually touch this plate, so you run it down a little ways and then just stop. And then to even things up, you rotate this one in until the spring lays nice and perpendicular to everything. It should come out just to the side of the other side of your tracking arm. Test it, make sure your spring's operating nicely. Wipe a little of the excess blue Loctite off there if you want, and then just let that harden up and you'll be good to go. Alright, moving on to now assembling your ratchet mechanism, and from the previous step, your tracking arm with your ratchet pawl attached. To begin with, we'll take the ratchet block and put your 3/8 16 by 1 inch bolts. And we'll be fastening those on with these 3/8 16 stainless acorn nuts. And as always, our trusty blue Loctite. The acorn nuts take 5/8, the 3/8 16 take a 9/16. And we get those tightened down pretty hard. We don't want those moving. So put a little elbow grease on those. Up next, take your extra beefy 3/4 inch hex bolt and assemble some thrust bearings onto there. Oops. Actually, take your 3/4 inch bolt, assemble it onto your tracking arm like that. Then we'll assemble the thrust bearings. Once again, you go washer, bearing, washer. You get one of them on there, and we'll need to depress this ratchet pawl slightly when we go to assemble it on here. You'll see. See, it gets in the way. You just press your thumb, slide it on the rest of the way, and at this point, make sure that you don't let the whole thing fall off, because it's just being propped on there. You take your washer, thrust bearing washer again, and this one I don't use any Loctite on because this thing is a pretty beefy piece of hardware, and it goes on plenty hard. It's not moving anywhere. So you take your lock nut, your 1 1/16 and 1 1/8. In here, you crank it down. Once again, you want this tight, but you don't want to go so tight with these huge wrenches that you crush the bearings. So you go tight, you'll feel it tighten up. And then from there, just make sure the thing rotates smoothly. If you feel like it's a little too tight, you can back off a little bit. Otherwise, you can grab this and hold on to your grinder base, move back and forth. There's going to be no play. Those extra wide footprint thrust bearings there, they upgraded to those. I was using 1/2 inch here, and 3/8 up here. And I'm using 3/4 inch and 1/2 inch. So I upgraded the size on those two by quite a bit, and I've been happy with those results. Now we'll assemble the pendulum, the tracking block, using the following hardware: 2 3/4 inch button head screws, a 1/4 inch by 1.5 inch precision shoulder bolt, a washer, and a nut. You'll need 3/8 or number 10 or M10, 1/8 inch T-handle, and a 5/32 T-handle. Alright, to begin, we'll put our tracking block down onto the tracking arm, making sure to line up those holes visually before grabbing your 3/4 inch 1/4 button head screws and assembling them onto the arm. Don't go crazy on these 1/4 inch fasteners. Get them in there, get them tight, but no need to go nuts. And that part is done. Now, you'll take your shoulder bolt and washer, slide the washer onto the shoulder bolt. Alright. From here, you put the pendulum inside, wiggle it around until you get the shoulder bolt going through, kind of like swizzle it around a little bit until it goes through. Now, put your lock nut on the back side. Use the combination of the wrench and your 1/8 inch T-handle until you secure the pendulum down. See how it moves freely like that? I like to get it to where it just has just a slight bit of drag on there. So as you add the wheel, that's going to provide weight, and even if it takes a little bit of force to move around, as you put tension on that wheel, even if it was out like this, and as soon as you go to tension, it's going to bring that right back down. So I found it just, the tracking's better if that's not an interference fit, but not just completely floppy in there. From here, we are going to mount your tracking wheel. First step involved, after we've mounted all your pendulum and your tracking block, is to take a 5/16 18 tap. And the reason I do this after assembly like this is so that way, instead of getting this small amount of thread, I now have thread through that entire width for your tracking. So the odds of that ever wearing out are very minimal because you've got such a long amount of thread. So assemble it first, tighten it down, put this in here. And back it out. Now, that will be a nice thread for you for your tracking knob. Next, we're taking our 3-inch tracking wheel, 2.5 inch half-inch long, 2.5-inch long, half-inch diameter hex bolt, putting that through your 9/16 length aluminum spacer, and pretty nice liberal amount of blue Loctite. I'll come over here. Oh, you know what I did? Damn it. Now we're going to move on to assembling the tracking wheel onto your pendulum using 1.5-inch long, half-inch diameter shoulder bolt, 9/16 spacer, pretty good glob of blue Loctite there. This you use a 1/4-inch T-handle. Get that tight, give her a spin. Alright, and you see there, it's being held up, but almost just like barely by the tension provided here on your pendulum axle bolt that we assembled in the previous step. Now we'll put the toolbar tensioning knobs on. You can do this in any configuration you like. The way I usually send them out is with the longer ones on the top bar. And just take care when you're first getting them in there that they're starting straight, but it should be fine. And I just make sure they're going in. If you're getting one with the aluminum plate, it's got helicoil inserts in there, so those stainless steel inserts will last a long time. I use them all the time for making fixtures when machining. And this is your tracking adjuster, and you'll notice there I take these over by hand and put a nice round on all those, because that way as it's driving into that pendulum it doesn't bind, gives it a nice even adjustment. So get that started. A little trick here, it seems counterintuitive because you're going to be adjusting this a lot, but I put a little dab of blue Loctite on there, and I'll tell you why. As you run that in, it's going to coat those threads. You'll see it's moving the tracking wheel now. You don't want to go crazy with that blue Loctite down in there because you want to be able to rotate it, but you'll be able to break that free. And after you've done that, that provides just enough interference on those threads, and so instead of moving so freely like it's doing now, it'll have a little bit of a gumminess to it almost, which seems counterproductive in most cases, but since this is an adjustment tool, you want that to remain where you've adjusted it, and it's not going to take much pressure to adjust it even with that blue Loctite in there. The initial time when you break it free, you'll notice it's pretty stiff, but after that, that's going to remain right where you want it. No vibration, backing your adjustment out as you go. I've heard early on, especially a lot of people with problems with their grinders from any manufacturer, it seemed like, with their adjustment knob continually just backing out as they would grind. The vibration was just loosening their adjustment, so that's the way around that. And if it ever starts to do that, all you have to do, back that back out, put a little dab of blue Loctite, thread it back on, you're good to go. And we'll put our locking lever on there. Before putting it on, assemble it with a nylon washer, a thin stainless washer, and your M10 handle. Started nice. And this, you'll tighten it like, I don't want it there. Simply pull out, adjust it to wherever you feel comfortable, pull out, tighten it back down, loosen it. So wherever you want that lever to lock, simply pull out, it'll lock back down, and then it'll operate just like how you want. You can test it, rotate it around. If in this step you feel like, oh, it's falling a little bit too easily, I'd like it to have a little bit more tension as it rotates. Tighten up this back rotating assembly. That'll provide a little bit more drag as you're rotating it from vertical to horizontal. And then I find that it's better to have a little bit more tension when you're flopping it down, so it doesn't, as soon as you pull this out, your grinder doesn't start to just tilt from the weight of the motor. The next step is to put your click pin in. A lot of times it'll just go in just like that. You won't have to do anything. On this one, same deal. Oh, see. Like, oh no, what am I going to do now? Take a 3/8 drill and I'll show you. You don't want to ream this hole out completely, just enough to do like an assembly fit. The tolerances are good, but every once in a while they're just, you know, there's something just slightly off, so I'd rather have boom, you're done. Tighten it down, you're good. Okay, now we're moving on to assembling the deep slack belt platen. In this video I've got the aluminum, half-inch aluminum version. You may have the steel version. But the assembly is essentially the same. Start off by taking your 3/8 fasteners, assembling it through the center location first, and then into your rotational slot position. Tighten this down. Okay. From there, you take your 2.5-inch hex bolt, your 2-inch aluminum wheel, place it down inside the cavity, assemble your aluminum washer, and some of our favorite blue Loctite. You can get it started by hand, and we'll use a 3/4 inch socket. Assemble that the rest of the way. Give it a test spin. Do the same thing for the top. Aluminum washer or spacer. Assemble. Voila. Now we'll be assembling the actual steel flat backing platen along with these aluminum brackets. To begin, take a 3/4 inch, 1/4-20 button head, 5/32 T-handle, and attach it. I usually go up towards the end of the slot there to begin with. Do the same thing for the top. Don't go really tight on these, just enough to kind of snug them in position, because then we're going to be taking our threaded plate. You'll notice the holes are slightly off to the one side. We'll be assembling it so that the holes are closer to this side over here, and then we'll rotate it on like that. So now we're grabbing our 1/2 inch quarter 20s and assembling it onto the angle bracket. And you can get these approximate. Once you get a belt on, that's when you set the exact location. But now I tighten these up just enough so that way if you are putting a belt on, it's not coming loose. But I've got it sitting back away from the wheels, so that way the belt will be out. So there's no danger of that getting in the way yet. And once you get the belt on, instead of it looking all cattywampus, you can adjust it right where you want it to be. There you have it. One assembled Torus-2x72 belt grinder. Thanks for watching, and I hope that this process was fairly straightforward. My goal is just to showcase what goes into putting one of these together. My idea was all along to provide a tool that would last a lifetime, so that was definitely my design intent. Wanted it to function. I wanted to bring something that I was proud of, that you could be proud of in your shops, and yeah, I think personally I've done that. I hope that you believe that as well when you receive yours. Thanks again for choosing me to be your 2x72 grinder manufacturer. I don't take that lightly. I know that it's a big purchase. It's not a cheap tool, but yeah, I mean, I guess it's not a cheap tool. So once again, that was my idea too. I wanted something that was going to last. Use robust materials, 3/8, in this case stainless steel base plates, 1/2 inch thick aluminum, 3/8 stainless, once again in this case motor plate. It's the, I don't know, I tried to give every fastener its due credit and really come up with something that was gonna handle whatever it is you guys need to throw at it. So with having said all that, happy grinding everybody, and I'll be around and talk to you later. Thanks.